My name is Isabel Carter. I am 22 years old and just graduated with a degree in communications, digital marketing from San Francisco State University. For many people, graduation day is the most important milestone of their student life. The long years of late nights and early mornings, the stressful exams, the moments when it felt impossible to keep going, all of it culminating in the moment you put on the purple gown and square cap, walk across the stage to the cheers of the crowd, and finally hold the diploma you worked so hard for. I used to dream about that moment too, but what I longed for even more was not the piece of paper, but the sight of my parents and my family sitting in the audience, clapping, smiling, and feeling proud that their daughter had made it to the finish line. For 4 years, I gave everything I had, partly for myself, but also to prove that I deserved recognition, that I was not less than anyone, not even my younger sister Vanessa, the family's Livestream star. That morning, as I stood in front of the mirror in my small dorm room, I looked at myself dressed in the purple gown, my wavy brown hair framing my face. I held a bouquet of roses my best friend Rachel had bought for me, and my heart swelled with a quiet, unexplainable hope. I imagined my parents walking into the auditorium, searching for me among the rows of graduates, their faces lighting up the moment they saw me. I pictured my mother crying with emotion, and my father, who was usually stern, giving me a subtle nod, the kind of nod I had waited for my whole childhood. But as the ceremony drew closer, my phone stayed silent. No call, no message. I decided to call them myself, only to hear my mother's clipped voice. "Isabel, we're busy today. Vanessa has a special live stream celebrating 1 million followers, and we need to help her prepare. You understand, don't you?" I froze, my heart clenching as if someone had crushed it in their fist. My voice trembled as I whispered, "But today is my graduation." My mother's tone stayed cold. "Yes, I know, but this live stream is very important for your sister's career. Be understanding, Isabel. I know you'll be fine." I hung up, paralyzed, the bouquet suddenly feeling as heavy as a stone in my hand. For a moment, I wanted to throw it away, but instead I gripped it tighter and forced myself to look into the mirror. Quietly, I told myself, "It's okay, I made it here on my own." It wasn't the first time I had been abandoned because of my sister, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. But that day, the pain pressed down on me like an open wound that refused to heal. I took a deep breath, wiped the corner of my eyes, and stepped outside. When my name was called on stage, the sound of applause filled the auditorium. I smiled, walking forward through the cheers of my classmates, but inside I felt hollow. My eyes drifted to the section reserved for parents. The empty seats stared back at me, a cold reminder that their absence was not an accident, it was a choice. The diploma in my hand felt unbearably heavy, not because of its worth, but because it was missing the presence of the people who should have been there. After the ceremony, my friends embraced their parents, posed for pictures, held bouquets, and basked in proud words and warm hugs. I stood quietly in the corner, forcing a faint smile, pretending to check my phone so no one would notice my eyes were red. Rachel came to my side, gently wrapping her arm around my shoulder. "Isabel, you're not alone. You did amazing," she whispered. I managed a weak smile. "Yeah, I'm fine, really fine." But deep down, I knew the truth, the joy of this milestone had been stolen from me. I returned to my dorm, packed up my belongings, and headed home. On the way, I comforted myself with the thought that at least when I walked through the front door, I would find some sense of peace again. My little room with its shelves of books, the photos taped on the wall, the desk where I had spent countless nights studying, it would all be there, a space where I could finally exhale and tell myself, "Isabel, you did it." What I didn't know was that the real pain was still waiting, right inside the house I had called home for 22 years. When I opened the door to my room, what greeted me was not the familiar space I had imagined. The bed was gone, the desk and bookshelves had vanished without a trace. In their place stood glaring ring lights, a camera mounted on a tripod, and a blinding pink backdrop with the words, "Vanessa Live," printed boldly across the center. Glittering outfits hung along the wall, shelves packed with makeup covered one corner, and in the middle of it all sat a pink and white gaming chair, as if declaring proudly that this was its new kingdom. I froze, my hand still clutching the doorknob, my heart pounding out of control. The smell of cosmetics and the plastic scent of new live streaming equipment rushed into my nose, so foreign it made me struggle to breathe. I felt like a stranger in my own home. That thought echoed in my mind, overwhelming and painful. My eyes darted around, searching for something familiar, a book, a poster, anything that still belonged to me. But there was nothing. Every trace of me had been erased, as if I had never existed there at all. I turned around, my voice trembling but trying to remain steady. "Where's my room?" The question came not just from my lips, but from the torn pieces of my heart. My mother came up from the kitchen, still holding a tray in her hands, her eyes indifferent as if I had asked the most trivial thing. "Isabel, you've graduated, you don't need your own room anymore. Your sister is building her career, she needs the space for her live stream. We've already arranged something for you, don't worry." I froze, my words caught in my throat. "Arranged for me? What do you mean? This is my room. It's mine." My mother sighed, sounding weary as though explaining to me was a burden. "You're grown now, it's time for you to face the world. Vanessa is only 19, she's just starting to build her future, she needs support. Your father and I had no other choice." I stared at her, searching her face for even a flicker of regret, but there was none. For years, I had grown used to comparisons, but deep down I still believed that at least today, after all my hard work, they would finally show me some pride. Instead, even my small room had been stripped away from me, sacrificed for the artificial lights that served my sister's faceless audience. I wanted to scream, to smash everything in sight, but my throat closed up and no sound came out. Vanessa breezed in from outside, her hair curled in glossy waves, lips painted in a bold red, holding her phone mid-live stream. "Oh, you're back? Don't block the light, sis. This is my studio now. Looks pretty cool, doesn't it?" She grinned smugly, waving her camera toward me as if I were nothing more than a prop in her show. My body went rigid, my fingers gripping the doorframe so tightly my knuckles turned white. Just then, I heard a scoff from the living room. My father walked in, arms crossed, his eyes cold as they swept over me. "What's all this noise about? Isabel, you've graduated. Now you need to think about standing on your own. Stop whining about childish things like a bedroom. This house belongs to the one with a real future." Each word felt like a knife plunging straight into my chest. Someone with a real future? So that was how he saw me. Nothing, despite all my effort, despite the fact that I had fought my way here on my own. I swallowed hard, looking around the room that had been transformed into Vanessa's virtual stage, and for the first time in my life, I realized with absolute clarity that this house no longer had a place for me. I turned away, walking slowly toward the stairs, my heart as heavy as stone. With every step down, I felt myself leaving behind not just the room, but the illusion that this place had ever been home. Inside, a voice echoed, "Isabel, you are no longer welcome here. It's time to go." Yet even in that moment, I still yearned for something small, a hug, a word of comfort, or simply for someone to say they were proud of me. But all I received were cold stares and the loss of the one space that had been mine. I stood frozen in the middle of what was once my room, now a foreign studio, the harsh glare of the ring lights casting their artificial glow onto my sister's face while I faded into the background like a shadow swallowed by the scene. My heart pounded violently, but part of me still clung to hope. Maybe this was a misunderstanding. Maybe my father would speak up, defend me, tell my mother and Vanessa that I too deserved a place to belong. Step by step, I turned back toward him, the man I had once believed was my anchor throughout childhood. In that instant, I longed for even the smallest sign of protection, any indication that he still saw me as his daughter. But his gaze never softened. Arms crossed, shoulders squared, his voice struck like a gavel slamming down. "The shed out back is empty. Stay there if you want, or go live somewhere else. This house now belongs to the one with a real future." I heard every word, each one slicing into me like a blade. The shed, that damp wooden shack where tools were kept, without windows, without a bed, filled only with the smell of hay and rust. And yet my father pointed to it and told me that was where I should stay, as if I were nothing more than a discarded object shoved to the edge of the yard. I choked back the tears welling up in my eyes and whispered, "I just graduated today. The least you could do is congratulate me." I prayed that reminder might stir something in him, might make him realize that I had just reached one of the most important milestones of my life. But instead of warmth, I was met with a cold, mocking laugh. He looked at me as if I were some useless stranger. "Graduating from a second-rate school, what's there to celebrate? Do you really think we'd be proud of a diploma with no prestige? Don't fool yourself. These days, value isn't in a degree, it's in fame and money. Look at your sister and learn from her." In that instant, memories of my childhood came rushing back like a wave drowning me. I remembered the times I brought home straight A's, eager to show them, only to hear the dismissive reply, "Yeah, fine. But look at your sister dancing, see how many people adore her." I remembered winning first place at a statewide speech competition, holding the shining trophy in my arms, while my parents left the ceremony halfway through just to take Vanessa to her performance. I remembered the countless nights I studied alone in my room, fighting through every obstacle by myself, only to wake up the next morning to their questions. "Did you cook something for your sister?" Never once did they ask how my studies were going. And now, even after reaching a major turning point in my life, they still erased it completely because to them, a social media star was worth more than a daughter who fought her way through with persistence. I no longer felt like blood in this family. Every word from my father cast me further out, turning me into an unwelcome guest in my own home. I turned to Vanessa. She was giggling, her phone aimed at me, her eyes gleaming with amusement as she captured the scene of my humiliation. "Did you hear that, sis? I'm the one with a future. That shed outside is perfect for you, at least it's quiet. No one's ever going to watch your live streams anyway, so you won't be disturbed." She spoke each word clearly, scattering salt onto the wound that was already bleeding. I wanted to scream, to ask them, what about the years I worked until I collapsed? What about the nights I stayed awake? What about the dreams I carried inside me? Do they mean nothing? But I already knew the answer. In this house, none of my effort ever counted. If I didn't shine like Vanessa, I would forever remain invisible. I turned away, trying to hide my tear-streaked face. My trembling hand still clutched the diploma inside my bag, now as heavy as a useless stone. Standing at the bottom of the stairs, I glanced back one last time, hoping my father would call me back, hoping my mother would look at me differently, hoping for some small miracle. But all I saw was the blinding glow of Livestream lights flooding the room that once belonged to me, and my father's cold silhouette sitting in his chair, not even sparing me a glance. That night, as I sat alone on the porch, the sound of crickets filled the silence, and a bitter truth settled into my heart. I was nothing more than an invisible daughter in this house. They had made their choice clearly. On one side was the dazzling social media star, and on the other was the quiet daughter who had just graduated from a school they dismissed as worthless. And I knew their choice would never fall on me. I sat outside for a long time, staring quietly at the house lit up brightly inside, yet holding no space for me anymore. Every laugh and every word from my sister's room, the room I had grown up in, cut into me like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. My mother busied herself in the kitchen, preparing late-night snacks for Vanessa, while my father leaned back on the couch, replaying clips from her live stream, his face glowing with pride. Not a single one of them remembered that today had been my graduation. Not one of them asked if I wanted a dinner to celebrate. I sat there, my hand trembling as it gripped the strap of my bag, my tears long dried, leaving only numbness and a vast, hollow emptiness inside me. By midnight, when the whole house had fallen silent, I quietly slipped into the basement storage room where they had shoved old suitcases and cluttered cardboard boxes. I pulled out the blue suitcase that had followed me through 4 years of college, unzipped it, and began packing the few clothes I had left. On the bookshelf, only a single notebook remained, filled with scribbles from my freshman year. I took it with me, clinging to it as if it were the last fragile piece of memory I could save. My old laptop, its charger, and my phone, those were all I could carry. Every item I placed inside the suitcase weighed heavier than the last, as though I was packing away my childhood and all the memories of this house, sealing them up to leave behind. I dragged the suitcase slowly up the stairs, the wheels clattering softly, careful not to wake anyone. Passing through the living room, I saw the television screen still glowing. My father had fallen asleep on the couch, his phone still open on one of Vanessa's videos. He had no idea and no interest that his eldest daughter was walking out of the house forever in the middle of the night. I paused for a moment, my chest aching, wondering if I should turn back, wake him, or at least leave a note. But then a voice inside me rang clear. Don't. He's already given you his answer all these years. I gripped the suitcase tighter and kept walking. Out in the yard, the moonlight glistened on the old shed my father had pointed to, the place he believed I deserved. Its wooden door was shut tight, paint peeling, cracks in the walls letting the cold wind whistle through. I stood there staring, and in that moment, a surge of determination rose within me. If this is not my home, then I will build one of my own. I didn't need to sleep in that dark, damp shed to prove my worth. I didn't need to accept that humiliation. I could leave, and I would leave. I booked a rideshare and sat silently in the back seat, clutching my suitcase to my chest. Through the window, the streets of San Francisco drifted by like a slow-motion film reel. The faint yellow of streetlights, late-night cafes still open, groups of students laughing together after their ceremonies. I wondered if any of them, like me, were being forced to walk away from their family on the most important day of their lives. But instead of letting tears fall, I lifted my chin and clenched my fists. The pain was sharp, but I knew this decision was the turning point I needed. Rachel opened the door when I knocked, just before 1 a.m. Her face, framed by her long, sleek black hair, first showed surprise, then quickly shifted to worry. "Isabel, what happened? Why are you here at this hour?" I forced a faint smile, my voice hoarse from holding back tears. I don't have a place to go back to anymore." Rachel didn't ask for details. She simply opened the door wider, pulled my suitcase inside, and wrapped me in a tight embrace. "It's okay. For now, stay here. My sofa is yours." Those simple words lodged in my throat, nearly breaking me. In the moment I lost my own family, I realized I had found another kind, someone not bound by blood, but by compassion, someone willing to give me a place to rest. That night, I curled up on Rachel's small sofa, staring at the blank white ceiling through blurry eyes. My suitcase sat unopened nearby, my laptop neatly placed on the table. I turned to the side, hugging a pillow, and overheard Rachel whispering to someone on the phone from her room. "She's okay, but deeply hurt. For a family to treat her like that on her graduation day, it's cruel." I bit my lip, burying my face into the pillow, letting the tears fall one last time. But as they dried, something else stirred inside me. Determination. I whispered to myself, "No one can take away my worth. I'll prove it, without their approval." Auguster. The next morning, Rachel handed me a cup of hot coffee before I could say a word. She sat across from me, her eyes gentle yet firm. "Isabel, you're talented. Don't let them crush you. I know what you accomplished in school. All you need is one chance, and you'll shine, so don't look back. Start again from here." I gripped the warm cup tightly, feeling the heat spread through my palms and into my heart. For the first time in hours, I felt that hollow emptiness inside me begin to fade. That day marked the beginning of a new chapter. I had lost my family, lost the familiar room I once called mine, lost the fragile hope of even a single word of recognition. But I had also found something else, the strength to stand up, to walk away, and to build a life of my own. And I swore to myself that one day, they would be forced to look back and see that the daughter they had called invisible had stepped out of the shadows to write her own story. The first days at Rachel's place felt uncertain, suspended between gratitude and fear. I was thankful for her shelter, yet anxious about a future that seemed like a blur. I couldn't stay on her sofa forever, watching others live their lives while I hid from my own reality. After a week, I started combing through job sites, sending out applications everywhere I could. Most companies demanded a minimum of 2 years' experience, something I didn't have as a fresh graduate. My inbox filled with rejection emails until it felt like a graveyard of small, crushed dreams. But I refused to let myself collapse. Each time I read the words, "We regret to inform you," I reminded myself, "It's fine, there's another company, another chance. I can't stop now." Finally, one morning, my phone rang. It was a small marketing startup in Oakland. The manager's voice was quick and impatient. "We need someone immediately, but we're only 3 years old, with a tight budget and a cutthroat environment. If you want to try, come in tomorrow for an interview." My heart pounded as I said yes without hesitation. The next day, I found myself sitting in a small office filled with bright posters and whiteboards scribbled with ideas. Across from me sat the founder and CEO, peering at me through thin-rimmed glasses. He cut straight to the point. "You don't have any real-world experience. So tell me, what exactly do you think you can do for us?" I drew in a deep breath before answering. "I have knowledge, I have the will to learn, and I have the ability to spot opportunities others overlook. Give me 1 week, and I'll prove it." His brows rose slightly, then he gave a faint smile. "All right, you're in. Trial period starts now." On my first day at work, I sat in the corner of a tiny office barely big enough for 10 people. There was no desk of my own, just an old company-issued laptop and a pile of small client accounts that no one had bothered to touch. I overheard a few colleagues whispering, "Why did they even hire this fresh grad? She looks so green." My face flushed, but I said nothing. Instead of letting their words crush me, I opened every old file I could find, spending sleepless nights reading case studies, learning how to optimize ads, how to track user insights. I experimented on those neglected projects, tweaking every image, every caption, step by step. The real chance came when a small clothing store in Oakland wanted to promote its summer collection. This client had complained multiple times that campaigns weren't working, that their budget was being wasted with no results. I volunteered to take it on, even as everyone eyed me with doubt. I drafted a plan to create a series of short TikTok videos highlighting the streetwear style loved by local youth. I personally called the store owner, asking to film on-site and interview real customers to create an authentic feel instead of glossy, lifeless ads. Within 3 weeks, the campaign exploded. The very first video hit over 1 million views, driving a flood of new customers to the store. Sales jumped by 40% in just 1 month, a result beyond anyone's expectations. The client called my company's director directly, overflowing with praise. And for the first time, I heard my colleagues whisper about me in a different way. "That girl's good. She really did it." That tiny taste of recognition made my heart race, as if someone had just handed me a lantern to light the darkness I had been walking through. From then on, I was gradually entrusted with more projects. During the day, I worked for the company, and at night, I took on freelance jobs writing content, managing social media for a handful of small and mid-sized brands. I learned to balance my time, even though exhaustion sometimes left me falling asleep at the desk. But unlike those lonely nights studying in the forgotten room of my parents' house, this time I felt I was truly building something that belonged to me. After 6 months, I had saved enough to move out of Rachel's place. I rented a tiny apartment in a quiet neighborhood near Lake Merritt in Oakland. It had just 1 bedroom, a small living room, and a narrow balcony overlooking the street. But to me, it was paradise. I carefully hung a few old posters on the wall, placed my laptop on the desk, and spread a sea blue bedsheet that matched the color of the suitcase I had carried with me. For the first time in my life, I felt I had a place that truly belonged to me, something no one could take away, no one could turn into a stage for someone else. On the first night in my new apartment, I opened the window to let the wind in, hugged my laptop, and gazed at the distant city lights. I laughed quietly to myself, tired but content. My thoughts drifted back to my parents and Vanessa, to the cold shed they once pointed me toward, and then to this small but free space of my own. I whispered, "Isabel, you've come a long way. This is only the beginning." Every rent check I paid came from my own hard work. Every successful project was proof that I didn't need them to survive. I was no longer the girl trembling at the door of the room that had been taken from me, no longer the invisible daughter in her parents' eyes. I was becoming someone else stronger, tougher, freer. And, deep down, I knew that this journey of independence would one day take me to a place where they would regret ever discarding me. Yet even with a stable role at the marketing firm in Oakland, even with my own small apartment, I couldn't deny one truth: the wounds from my family never really disappeared. Every time I saw my sister's name Vanessa flash across social media with streams of adoring comments, or when I overheard colleagues talking about how young influencers are reshaping the market, my heart would tighten. To outsiders, she was the symbol of a new generation. Beautiful, famous, admired by millions. And me? Despite everything I had achieved, I still felt like a shadow, an indistinct, overlooked existence in the very home where I was born. I knew I was moving forward, growing stronger, but the ghost of comparison and dismissal clung to me like an endless, stretching shadow. Childhood memories returned to me in restless dreams. I remembered clearly the first time I realized my place in the family. I was 6, Vanessa was 3. On my birthday, I received a small doll, a gift I had been waiting for all month. Just as I opened the box, Vanessa ran over, crying for it. My mother sighed, turned to me, and said, "Isabel, she's younger. You're the older sister, let her have it. Be a good girl." I held the doll tightly, my eyes brimming with tears, but I still had to hold it out to her. Vanessa hugged it to her chest, beaming, while I learned my first lesson. In this house, my sister's joy would always matter more than my dreams. The same story repeated itself throughout the years. I was always the one who had to give way, from toys, to my own room, to my parents' attention. I used to love drawing, dreaming one day of studying fine arts. But when Vanessa began dancing and posting videos online, my parents poured all their money and time into her. What's the use of drawing? Real art is capturing an audience, getting views, getting paid, my father once said as he cut short my dream. I packed my colored pencils into a corner of the closet and never touched them again. One particular memory still burns vividly in my mind: the day I was in high school and entered the statewide speech competition. I poured my entire heart into it, practicing for weeks, writing a speech filled with my beliefs and hopes. When I stood on stage, my heart raced, but every word left my mouth strong and clear. When the judges announced my name as the winner, I burst into tears, my hands trembling as I held the gleaming trophy. I looked into the audience, desperate to find the proud faces of my parents, but their seats were empty. I rushed backstage, calling them in my excitement, only to hear my mother's voice over loud music. "Your dad and I had to take Vanessa to a TikTok dance contest. You understand, right?" That was live-streamed for tens of thousands of viewers. It's important. I froze, my fingers tightening around the trophy. At the very moment I should have been recognized, I was invisible once again. Those memories, year after year, slowly buried my sense of self-worth. They taught me that recognition from my family was a luxury, that their love always came with conditions reserved only for the child who could make them look good in front of others. And me, the quiet daughter, diligent in her studies, was never enough. But what they never expected was that those very wounds were shaping me. At first, I cried, I felt small. I asked myself, why was I born into this family? Why can't I be loved the way my sister is? Yet over time, I learned to stop depending on their approval. I began seeking validation elsewhere, from teachers, from friends, from myself. I remembered the time Rachel gripped my hand tightly and said, "You're talented, don't let them crush you." Those words became an anchor, giving me the strength to rise each time I fell. I realized that if I kept waiting for my parents to turn and see me, I would remain in the shadows forever. So I chose another path, the path of standing firm on my own feet. I threw myself into work, learning relentlessly, letting small victories stack up into a brighter journey. I turned the pain of being compared into fuel to prove that even without fame on the internet, I could still create real value. There were nights when, after completing a successful project, I would sit by the window of my small apartment, looking out at the city lights, and wonder, if my parents could see this, would they change their minds about me? But then I would smile and shake my head. The answer no longer mattered. Because I had already learned how to stand tall, how to light up my own life without needing praise from those who had always overlooked me. It was the wounds from my childhood that shaped the person I had become: resilient, unyielding, and determined. I understood now that true worth did not lie in the glare of ring lights or in the number of followers one could boast. Real value was the ability to endure without breaking, to rise again and keep moving forward, even when no one clapped for you. And I knew that one day, all of these quiet efforts would be seen not necessarily by them, but by the world. I still remember that morning vividly, a morning that seemed ordinary at first. I was sitting in my small apartment, a steaming cup of coffee beside my laptop, adjusting a report for a modest client. Then my phone rang. On the other end was a crisp, professional voice. "Hello, this is Sarah, Director of External Relations at Brightwave Media. We've been following the streetwear campaign you launched for the store in Oakland. Truly impressive. Our company would like to invite you to Silicon Valley to discuss an international collaboration." I froze. Brightwave Media was not an unfamiliar name. It was one of the leading digital media corporations, famous for global campaigns that reached tens of millions. I took a deep breath and replied steadily, "Yes, I'd be honored." But when I hung up, my hands trembled so badly I nearly spilled my coffee. On the day of the meeting, I wore a simple gray blazer and the old pair of heels I had kept since my internship days. The Brightwave Media headquarters in downtown Palo Alto gleamed with glass and steel, exuding authority with every step I took inside. I told myself to stay calm, but my heartbeat was so loud I feared the people across from me might hear it. In the conference room, the global strategy director and a team of associates were already waiting. They pulled up a large screen and replayed the TikTok video I had created for that small clothing store. One of the managers spoke. "We've never seen a low-budget campaign achieve this level of community impact. Isabel, we want you to bring this mindset to an international campaign targeting both the Asian and European markets." For a moment, I hesitated. I was just a young woman who had built her career from nothing. How could I possibly carry the weight of such a massive project? But immediately, a voice inside me answered. "You once thought you wouldn't survive after being cast out of your own home. Yet you did. You once thought no client would ever trust you, and you proved them wrong. So why not now?" I lifted my head, looked them straight in the eyes, and said, "I'll do it. But I need the freedom to create in my own way. I won't be confined by pre-made templates." The negotiations stretched on for nearly 2 months. I had to prove myself with detailed plans, trial runs, and projected data. I spent countless sleepless nights poring over numbers, researching the cultures of different countries, analyzing social media trends across regions. There were moments when the pressure nearly broke me, but every time I faltered, I remembered my father's cold eyes and his words. "What's there to celebrate about graduating from a second-rate school?" And that memory became the fire that burned within me. I had to show them all. I didn't need my family's false pride. I could create my own worth. Finally, Brightwave Media sent the official contract. The value: $2.5 million. And it wasn't just a service agreement. They invited me to become a co-founding strategic partner, someone who would directly lead the entire international campaign. When I saw that number on paper, my heart pounded so hard I could barely breathe. I couldn't believe my eyes. I had once thought my life would be confined to small freelance gigs, running ads for a few local shops. And yet here I was, standing shoulder to shoulder with billion-dollar corporations, being treated as an essential part of their global strategy. Rachel was the first person I told. When I showed her the contract, her eyes widened, then suddenly filled with tears. "Oh my God, Isabel. You did what they swore you never could. Do you remember? That night you came to my place with just a small suitcase, convinced you had nothing but a blurry future, and now, her voice broke, unable to finish. I smiled, not the kind of smile I used to wear to hide my pain, but a smile of true confidence. I don't care what they think anymore, I've already proven it. The months that followed were the busiest of my life. I traveled constantly between Oakland and Silicon Valley, working in gleaming conference rooms, presenting to some of the sharpest minds in international marketing. I led a team of young creatives, proposing bold ideas that even Brightwave had never dared to try. And the miracle was they trusted me. They listened, took notes, and followed my direction. Every day, I felt myself stepping further and further away from the shadow of my past. The campaign's pilot launch in Asia was a resounding success. Millions of people shared the videos, and the brand's hashtag became a trending topic within just 1 week. Growth numbers shattered projections, and soon my name appeared in industry headlines. Rising star in digital marketing, the young woman from Oakland behind a global sensation. I read those words with my heart pounding, not out of hunger for fame, but because I finally knew my true worth was being recognized by people who didn't know me, who shared no blood ties, and who owed me nothing. The evening the campaign officially hit 100 million impressions, Rachel and I sat on the balcony of my apartment, opening a cheap bottle of wine. Between bursts of laughter, I suddenly grew quiet, gazing up at the night sky. "Rachel, you know," I said softly, "there was a time when I thought I'd never be seen. But tonight, I understand something clearly. My worth doesn't depend on my family's recognition. It lies in what I've built with my own hands." Rachel smiled, raising her glass. "And you, Isabel, you've built an earthquake." I took a sip of wine, a rare sense of peace rising in me. The journey from that old suitcase, from nights on Rachel's sofa, to where I stood now felt like a dream. And in that moment, I knew the road ahead would only lead to even greater doors opening. But more important than anything, I had broken free from the label of the invisible daughter. I no longer needed their opinion, because the truth was already undeniable. I had made it. A year had passed since the day I signed the contract with Brightwave Media, and my life had completely transformed. I had my own apartment, a stable career, and an income that not only sustained me but gave me, for the first time in my life, a sense of true security. I traveled for work, gave presentations, met people I had once only admired from a distance. I was no longer the girl curled up on Rachel's sofa with nothing but an old suitcase. I had stepped into my own light. But one June morning, as I sipped coffee and reviewed a new campaign report, my phone buzzed non-stop on the table. I glanced at the screen and nearly spilled my cup. Over 60 missed calls from my mother. And one short message. "Where are you?" I froze. In the past year, I had cut off almost all contact. No calls, no messages from them, except for a few brief words in the early months that I ignored. They had been too busy with Vanessa, with their trips, with basking in the glow of their younger daughter. So why now? Why 60 missed calls in a single night? My heart pounded. A part of me wanted to pick up immediately, but another part stayed cold, reminding me that these were the same people who had once cast me out of my own home. I let the phone keep buzzing, my eyes fixed on that short message. "Where are you?" A simple question, yet beneath it, I could feel sheer panic. Curious, I opened my laptop and typed Vanessa's name into social media. Within seconds, the screen filled with headlines. Scandal. A video clip showed her pretending to cry on a livestream to win sympathy only for a staff member to expose her on air, revealing the entire act was staged. Viewers were outraged, brands began pulling contracts one after another. In less than a week, Vanessa's golden livestream star image had completely collapsed. From a girl with millions of followers, she had become the subject of mockery everywhere. I sat in silence, my hands trembling not from gloating, but from realizing how painfully familiar this story was. They had built everything on illusion. And now that illusion had shattered, dragging the entire family down with it. I scrolled through more articles and realized the fall was even worse than I thought. Vanessa's biggest sponsorship deal worth nearly $1 million had been canceled, with a demand for damages due to breach of contract. The sponsor hadn't just pulled out, they were suing, claiming their brand image had been severely harmed. My parents, who had poured every cent and every ounce of faith into Vanessa's career, were now facing a financial crisis. The house that once blazed with camera lights was now on the brink of foreclosure. And so they turned to me. Me, the daughter they had once shoved toward a cold, damp shed. Me, the one they mocked, saying I had no future. They called me more than 60 times in one night, clinging to me like I was their last lifeline in a storm of their own making. I sat there staring at my phone screen, at the number 60 flashing, at the words, "Where are you?" My hands trembled as memories rushed back like a film playing in reverse. I saw again my father's cold eyes, heard his mocking voice. What's there to celebrate about a second-rate degree? I remembered the way his finger pointed out toward the yard, to that rotting shed. Stay there if you want, otherwise, leave. This house is for the one with a real future. I remembered the feeling of dragging my suitcase through the night, past Vanessa's ring-lit room, my heart shattering. And now, those very same people were reaching for me. Part of me wanted to laugh bitterly and ignore them. Another part still ached, the part of a daughter who once longed for just a little recognition, a trace of love. But above all, I knew this was a defining moment. Not for revenge, but for me to understand that I had finally broken free of that cycle. I was no longer the girl standing in front of an empty room, cast out of her own house. I was Isabel Carter, the woman who had signed a $2.5 million contract with Brightwave Media, the woman who had built a life without them. I set the phone down on the table and drew in a long breath. The ringing kept going, over and over, like a relentless knock from the past. But this time, I had the power to choose. And my choice was not to let that past drag me down ever again. I whispered softly, almost to myself. A year ago, my father pointed me to a shed. Today, I show them another door, the one I walked through, and will never return from. I stayed silent for days, ignoring the flood of calls and messages that filled my phone screen. But one afternoon, as I drove past the familiar road leading back to my old neighborhood, I suddenly stopped. The house was still there, its paint peeling in patches, the iron gate loose on its hinges, weeds crawling over the fence. It was no longer the brightly lit place it once was, buzzing with the false laughter of live streams. I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel tightly, hesitating for a long time. Part of me wanted to keep driving, to pretend the past was dead. But another part of me urged, it was time to face them, not to rekindle family ties, but to show them that the choice they made back then had led them exactly here. I stepped out, the click of my heels sharp against the pavement. The sleek black car behind me reflected a confident figure, a stark contrast to the girl who had dragged a suitcase into the night just 1 year ago. The door creaked open, and my mother appeared. Her face was gaunt, dark circles hollowing her eyes, strands of gray weaving through her hair. The moment she saw me, she broke down, clutching my hands as if afraid I might vanish. "Isabel, you're home, thank God. You have to help us, your sister. She's losing everything." I looked down at her trembling hands but didn't squeeze back. A chill spread through me instead. Then my father stepped out. The arrogant pride that once radiated from him was gone. His shirt was wrinkled, his posture weary. But in his voice still lingered that old commanding tone. "Isabel, you're talented, you're working with a big company now, you have connections. Use your reputation in the industry to speak for your sister. If you don't step in, her career will collapse, and this family will be finished." I lifted my eyes to him, and, in that instant, a ghost from a year ago flickered before me. Him standing in the living room, pointing toward the backyard, his voice cold and sharp. "The shed is empty. Stay there if you want, or leave. This house is only for someone with a real future." A shiver ran through me. But this time, instead of silent pain, I let a faint smile curl across my lips. I looked straight into my father's eyes and said slowly, "Do you remember what you told me a year ago? That this house was only for the one with a future? Today, I stand here not to beg for your recognition, but to show you. I am the one with a future, and you are the ones who chose to turn your backs on it." My mother broke into louder sobs, trying to pull me into the house, but I stood firm as stone. Isabel, please, save your sister, save this family. We are blood. You can't abandon us, can you? I turned to her, my gaze like ice. Blood? When I won the state speech competition, your seats were empty. When I graduated, you left for a live stream. When I needed just one word of congratulations, you pointed me to the shed. Don't talk to me about blood. Blood doesn't treat each other like that. The air went silent, broken only by my mother's muffled cries. Vanessa appeared at the top of the stairs, her makeup smeared, her eyes swollen red. Her voice trembled as she spoke. Sister, please. I was wrong. I need you. I looked at her, the same sister who once smirked when I was cast out of my room. The one who called me a failure. I sighed. Vanessa, I don't hate you, but I won't save you. The path you chose led you here, and so did its consequences. I once wanted to belong to this family, but you and our parents taught me long ago that I never did. I turned and stepped down the porch. My father's voice rang out behind me, heavy with desperation. Isabel, if you leave, no one will save us. I stopped for a moment, my back still to them, and spoke slowly but firmly. A year ago, you pointed me to the shed. Today, I show you another door, the one I am walking through, and I will never look back. I strode toward my car, the rhythm of my heels steady like a calm heartbeat. As the door shut behind me, I glanced into the rearview mirror. My parents stood on the porch, small and broken, stripped of the pride they once wielded. Vanessa collapsed onto the steps, her face buried in her hands. The sight stirred neither triumph nor regret in me. It only confirmed one truth. Everyone must face the weight of their own choices. They chose to abandon me. And now, they would live with the consequences. The car rolled forward, leaving behind the house that had once been called home. But in my heart, it was nothing more than a memory now. I didn't need to look back, because the road ahead was where I truly belonged. And for the first time, I felt my wings spread wide, no longer bound by false recognition, no longer living in anyone's shadow. I was free. A week after I returned to that old house and spoke my final words to my parents, I decided to host a small gathering in my new apartment. Not a lavish party, not the blinding lights of a livestream stage like the house I grew up in, but a simple, cozy space where I could invite the people who had truly walked this journey with me. I stood in the kitchen, arranging the food myself. A few plates of salad, a pot of steaming pasta, and a bottle of wine Rachel had brought back from a recent work trip. I wanted everything to be genuine, humble, no spectacle, no performance, no artificial lights. When the doorbell rang, Rachel was the first to arrive. She hugged me tightly, her eyes glimmering with joy. Finally, you're smiling without having to force it. I laughed and replied, yeah, and I owe so much of that to you. Next came a few colleagues from Brightwave Media, the ones who had stayed up all night with me to push campaigns through, who had eaten cold pizza in conference rooms, who had cheered when our success became real. They walked in, shedding their business blazers, relaxing into the warmth of friendship. No one saw me as a junior employee anymore, but as an equal, a true part of the team. My small apartment quickly filled with laughter. We ate, we shared stories of those difficult early days, and we doubled over laughing as we remembered silly mistakes we had once made. I sat back on the sofa, glass of wine in hand, and looked around the room. Every face glowed with genuine smiles, unforced and true. No one was posing for a camera, no one was performing for likes or shares. There was only the honesty of joy, shared within the four walls of my little home, a warmth so real that it nearly brought me to tears. Rachel lifted her glass toward me and said, Isabel, you've come such a long way. From that night with nothing but a small suitcase and tear-stained eyes, to this moment today, where you've built your career and created a home of your own. We're proud of you. Everyone raised their glasses in unison, the sound of cheers filling the room and sending a rush of warmth through my chest. I took a small sip of wine, set my glass down, and stood. The room gradually grew quiet, every gaze turning toward me. I drew in a deep breath, my voice trembling slightly but steady at its core. Some of us aren't lucky enough to be born into families that know how to cherish us. I was belittled, compared, cast out of my own room to make space for a false spotlight. For a long time, I believed my worth depended on whether my parents were proud of me. But standing here today, I understand something. Family isn't about blood. Family is the people who choose to stand by you, who lift you up, who love you without conditions. I paused, glancing at Rachel, the friend who opened her door to me on a rainy night, and then at my colleagues, who trusted me even when I was just the new girl. Smiling, I continued firmly, I lost a family, but I also found a real one. And that is worth more than anything else. The applause that followed wasn't loud, but it was warm and true. Rachel hugged me again, whispering, "You found yourself." I nodded, my eyes stinging, but my heart light. These were no longer tears of pain, but tears of release, of freedom. As the evening wound down, I sat alone by the window, watching the city lights flicker like stars. My mind drifted back through it all. The empty seats at my graduation, the bedroom turned into a studio, the cruel words that cast me out, the nights curled up on a friend's sofa. All of it had passed, yet the scars would always remind me of where I had risen from. And now, I had a new family, not bound by blood, but chosen through genuine love and care. Before I close, I want to leave this message for you, the ones listening to my story. Maybe you too have felt invisible in your own family. Maybe you were abandoned at the moments that mattered most. But please remember this, your worth does not depend on their recognition. Your worth lies in the choice to rise, to keep moving forward, and to seek out those who truly see you. Never let the past chain you to your pain. You deserve a home. You deserve love, even if it comes from people who share no blood with you. And now, I want to ask you, the ones hearing my journey. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? And today, where are you listening to this story from?